The night was crisp, the air thick with the aroma of grilled steak and freshly baked bread as Cristiano Ronaldo stepped out of an upscale Lisbon restaurant. He had just finished a quiet dinner, enjoying a rare moment of peace away from the relentless demands of his career. But as he moved toward his car, laughter caught his attention. It wasn't the joyful kind. It was cruel, sharp, and tinged with mockery. Near the sidewalk, two teenagers stood in front of a homeless man, mimicking his unsteady stance, laughing at his tattered clothes. One of them exaggerated a limp while the other clutched his stomach as if barely able to contain his amusement. The man, frail and hunched, sat on the cold pavement, his eyes fixed downward, his dignity crushed under the weight of humiliation. His hands, rough and cracked from exposure, clenched around the few coins he had collected that day. Each cruel laugh felt like another blow, deepening the wounds that life had already carved into his soul. Ronaldo's jaw tightened. The scene before him ignited something deep inside, a mixture of anger and sorrow. Without hesitation, he strode toward them, his presence commanding attention. The teenagers, still caught in their cruel mockery, didn't notice him at first. But as he drew closer, his shadow stretched over them, and the laughter faltered. His piercing gaze locked onto them, filled not just with reprimand, but with something more, a silent demand for accountability. The air around them seemed to shift, heavy with unspoken words as he prepared to confront them. "Is this how you treat people?" His voice was low, but carried an unmistakable authority. The moment they recognized him, their smug expressions vanished, replaced by wide-eyed shock and embarrassment. "A man down on his luck doesn't deserve your judgment. He deserves your kindness." The teens stammered apologies before retreating, shame evident in their hurried steps. Ronaldo exhaled, then turned to the homeless man. The man avoided eye contact, his fingers trembling as he clutched a thin, frayed blanket around his shoulders. "Are you okay?" Ronaldo crouched beside him, his tone softer now. The man nodded but didn't speak. Something about him struck Ronaldo, a quiet dignity beneath the layers of hardship. "What's your name?" A long silence stretched between them before the man whispered, "Bernardo." Ronaldo pulled out his wallet and handed him a significant amount of cash. "This should help you get something warm to eat and a place to stay tonight." Bernardo hesitated before taking the money, his hands shaking, his lips forming words that never left his mouth. He looked up, and for a fleeting second, Ronaldo saw something behind those eyes. Something broken, something lost. Weeks passed, and Ronaldo didn't forget about Bernardo. He wondered if the man had found a way off the streets, or if life had continued to beat him down. Then, an unexpected moment would bring him back into his thoughts with a force he never anticipated. It happened at a charity event. Ronaldo had been invited to support injured firefighters who, due to tragic accidents, could no longer serve. The event was intimate, held in a hall adorned with photos and commendations of the country's bravest heroes. As he walked past the exhibits, something made him stop. A framed photograph on the wall, a firefighter in full uniform, his eyes sharp, his jaw strong. He looked familiar. Ronaldo's pulse quickened. He leaned in. It was impossible. The eyes, the structure of the face. This was Bernardo. He turned to a nearby firefighter. "This man, do you know him?" The firefighter glanced at the photo and nodded. "Of course, that's Bernardo Ferreira, one of the bravest we've ever had. He saved countless lives." Ronaldo's breath hitched. "What happened to him?" The man sighed. "A tragedy. A few years ago, he rescued an entire family from a burning building, but a few moments later he lost his own in a car accident. His wife and 2 kids, gone." The crash was devastating. A reckless driver speeding through an intersection, slamming into their vehicle with a force that left nothing but wreckage. He arrived at the hospital too late. There was nothing left for him to save. That broke him. He never recovered. He tried to return to work, but the weight of his grief was unbearable. He would freeze up during drills, his mind clouded by memories of the family he lost. Eventually he left the force, disappeared into the streets. No one's seen him in years. A weight settled in Ronaldo's chest. He had met this man, not as a hero, but as a shadow of what he once was. Bernardo had fallen from being a celebrated firefighter to a forgotten figure on the streets. The image of him sitting alone on the pavement, mocked and humiliated by careless teenagers, burned in Ronaldo's mind. He wasn't just another lost soul. He was a man who had given everything to save others, only to have fate take the most precious thing from him. And now he was fading into the background of a world that had once applauded his bravery. That night, Ronaldo couldn't shake the image from his mind. He knew what he had to do. With the help of a few firefighters, he launched a search for Bernardo. Days turned into weeks. They scoured shelters, hospitals, back alleys, anywhere he might be. Just as frustration threatened to take over, a breakthrough came from an unexpected place, a small soup kitchen on the outskirts of the city. A volunteer recalled seeing a man who fit Bernardo's description. Ronaldo wasted no time. When he arrived, the kitchen was nearly empty, save for a few individuals huddled over bowls of steaming broth. Then he saw him. Bernardo sat in the corner, staring blankly at his meal. His hands, though calloused and worn, still had the strength of a man who once carried people from flames. Ronaldo approached, his heart hammering. "Bernardo!" The man looked up slowly. Recognition flickered in his weary eyes. "You again?" "I've been looking for you," Ronaldo said, sitting across from him. "I know who you are." Bernardo stiffened. His gaze fell to his hands. "That man is gone." "No, he's not," Ronaldo insisted. "He's just lost." A long silence, then Bernardo exhaled, a shuddering breath that carried the weight of years of sorrow. "I couldn't save them," he whispered. "I saved so many, but not them." Ronaldo's chest tightened. "Bernardo, your family wouldn't want you to disappear. You're not just a firefighter. You're a hero." Tears welled in Bernardo's eyes. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to feel, to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was a path back. His lips quivered as memories surged, his wife's laughter, the tiny hands of his children wrapped around his fingers, the pride he once carried wearing his uniform. The pain had been unbearable, a weight so crushing that he had convinced himself he had no future. But now, standing before Ronaldo, someone who saw him not as a failure but as a man worth saving, something shifted inside him. A spark, faint but real. "I don't know if I can," he whispered, his voice raw with years of buried sorrow. Ronaldo placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "You don't have to do it alone, but you have to try." Bernardo inhaled sharply, as if breathing in the possibility of hope for the first time. It was terrifying, but for the first time in years he considered that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't beyond redemption. With Ronaldo's help, Bernardo entered a rehabilitation program. The process wasn't easy. At first, he struggled to accept help, his instincts telling him he didn't deserve a second chance. But through counselling, he slowly confronted the grief he had buried for years. He spoke about the night of the accident, about the guilt that had consumed him, about the countless times he wished he had been the one in that car instead of his family. Ronaldo visited him often, offering encouragement, reminding him that he still had a purpose. After months of hard work, Bernardo found stability. He was offered a role at the fire department, not as a firefighter, but as a mentor for young recruits. His strength, his experience, his bravery, they hadn't been lost, only buried beneath grief. The first day he stepped back into the station, he hesitated, memories flooding him. But as he walked through the halls past the framed photos of those who had served before him, something inside him felt right. Training the next generation of firefighters became his new mission, his way of honouring the family he lost. And for the first time in years, Bernardo looked in the mirror and saw not just a broken man, but someone rebuilding step by step, with hope lighting the way forward. A while later, Ronaldo made his way to the firehouse. Bernardo stood tall, his uniform crisp, a sense of purpose returning to his stance. "You brought me back," Bernardo said. Ronaldo shook his head. "You found your way back. I just reminded you who you are." As Ronaldo left the station that day, he knew this was more than a chance encounter. It was fate. A reminder that kindness can change lives, and that even the strongest among us sometimes need someone to believe in them.